Coming up on the Lui Diaz Podcast.
I feel like you're not going to be successful in anything that you're not 100% invested in, because like regardless of like how miserable the task is, there will be some psycho out there that is obsessed with it that you're competing with.
Hi and welcome to the Lui Diaz Podcast, the podcast where you'll meet some of the most fascinating and incredible people from all walks of life. And together, we're inviting you in to be our special guest as we take you through some of their amazing experiences, adventures and journeys. So sit back and I hope you enjoy this episode of the Lui Diaz Podcast. All right, hi audience. Welcome to another episode of the Lui Diaz Podcast. You're going to be hearing some background noise at the moment just because we're set up in Hosier Lane. And when I say we, I'm talking about myself and my guest, Sean Collier, comedian from New Zealand, here in Melbourne, just about to actually do a stint at the comedy show. Welcome, Sean. Thanks for coming and joining me out in a public space. This feels kind of like a weird vibe at the moment, but we'll get through it.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. This is we're getting some weird looks from walkers by. It's fun.
Well, you know what it is? It's that we've camped ourselves right in front of one of the graffiti pieces here, and maybe they're looking through us or at us, but it's good to be doing this out in public, and thanks for joining me. It's great to have you here. I met you last Wednesday night at a comedy gig that you were doing with a bunch of other comedians.
You did, yeah, the Bud of Love. It's an interesting spot.
Yeah, it's a wine bar in Footscray here in Melbourne for any international listeners, and I got to say the start of the show was hard to get through. But when you came on, you know, I think you've just got a way of building rapport with the crowd very quickly.
Well, what I did was I just shat on the gig, essentially. I think the first laugh I got was talking about the other comedians that bombed and left, you know. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of shitty gigs in Melbourne, so I've got into the habit of learning how to sort of try turn it around when it's a real dismal vibe. Like I almost thrive off it now, you know.
Yeah, wow. And I guess for my audience who's been following the podcast for a little while, you're the first comedian I'm having on, which is a real treat for me.
I'm honoured.
Because, well, yeah, and so am I. And thank you once again for being here. I guess it's just because, you know, I talk to a lot of adventurers and travelers, and I even talk to filmmakers and music producers, and they're all really inspiring people.
Comedians are not.
But there's a big but there. I got to the end of last year and I thought, you know, all these people are inspiring, and yeah, like who doesn't like being inspired or here or there, but what am I missing? I'm missing having a good, hard, old-fashioned laugh with someone, and that's...
Oh, I fucking hope that's me.
It was you on Wednesday night. And yeah, I realised in that moment that this was my time. If I'm ever going to ask a comedian to be on the podcast, it's going to be now. And you were up for it straight away.
Yeah, fucking A. I'm taking every possible gig that I get offered at the moment, which is part of the reason why you see me at things like the Bud of Love, which I think that was the last show they're ever having there. That place is closing.
Yeah.
But yeah, like this week, bro, I've literally performed like 5 times and every single show has just been god awful. Like, yeah. But it's fucking, yeah, it's hilarious. It is. I get a sick pleasure out of it now. I used to hate it, but now it's like I've reached the point where I actually love the grind of it. Like even the real miserable, sad gigs where you just have people just going up, just having full mental health crises on stage. You know, there's a pleasure to be derived from it.
You know what? I love it. I love that you view it as a challenge. And there's something that occurred to me maybe at some point last year. I was thinking, you know, I was watching one of your reels today, and you were talking in one of the reels about, you know, the dark times and you know, the bad news stories and the wars and all of that stuff. I'm not sure if you remember that reel.
Oh, yeah.
And for me, I had been watching a lot of clips of like Dave Chappelle and Bill Burr at the time. And I got to a point where I realized actually comedians are the saviors of society. They're the greatest critical thinkers. They can take anything and put a funny lens on it. And I think it says to me that you're totally up for the challenge of taking a dismal vibe and turning it around.
Yeah, well, that's sort of the whole art form, I suppose. And it's necessary. I think like if you're in comedy for anything other than like alienating yourself, making your parents ashamed and losing money, you may as well give up, because that's like all it's going to be. But I've literally got to a point now where I fucking enjoy that. Like it's, yeah. But I've been doing it like 7 years now, still doing gigs for free, still making no money at all, but it's fun, man. It's like, you know, it's made my life like immeasurably more interesting. Like the amount of just absolute lunatics that I know, you know, the amount of like weird situations I've been in. Yeah, it's like literally the only thing where you just get like I've been at gigs where like one person performing is a Jehovah's Witness, the other's like a transgender, you know, and it's just like you've got all these people backstage just trying to communicate with their fucking autism, you know. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I love that. It's beautiful, and it sounds like a beautiful mess. Yeah, just describing what you just said, it makes sense. It makes sense that the way that you view it, it's like a real pleasure. You get pleasure out of it now. That's what happened. You brought that energy of the pleasure of the challenge into that room on Wednesday night and turned a crowd that really wasn't laughing very much into a crowd that started laughing. And you probably set up the rest of the guys for the rest of the night.
Oh, I hope so. I wasn't really watching the other performers because but I could hear the silence, you know, so I was like, I was just getting mentally prepared, like this is going to be fucking dark, yeah. But like for me, like sometimes you get gigs where you go on stage and you're like, hello, and you get a laugh from that, and you're just like, this audience is so warmed up that there's nothing to be taken from this, whereas for me, like it's much more pleasurable to get like an audience that's just not keen at all, like no one wants to be there, and you start getting laughs out of them. Like, you know, it's a lot more satisfying. Like, it's not the same if you win a fight that everyone knows you're going to win.
Yeah.
You know, it's much better to be the underdog.
I love that.
Just get put up on the chopping block, you know?
Yes. Yeah, the fight analogy is one that I really take to, because I watch a lot of UFC.
Same.
And everyone knows O'Malley's going to win over Cheeto. You know, it's...
it's not the same.
It's not the same. But yeah, I mean, you talked about preparation, and then you sort of went to... I mean, we're sticking on that thread of enjoying the challenge of turning around a dark room or a room that's not laughing. But then I think to myself, what is your goal in comedy? Do you have aspirations for, you know...
Oh, yeah, obviously. Like, I'm not keen to just do it. Like, I say that I enjoy those gigs, but I fucking don't want to do them, you know, like, not long term. Like, obviously, that's not... Like, if I'm still performing for free at open mics with, like, 4 people at them when I'm, like, 45, you know, I don't want to be doing that. So, like, yeah, I obviously want to grow and, you know, make some money from it at some point. But if you do it for that, you're going to fail, because it's so miserable and hard that you're just going to give up. So for me, I've reached a point now that where like I'm really honed in. I'm just trying to enjoy squeezing laughs out of crowds, and that's all I'm doing. I'm working on material. I'm doing an hour. You know, I'm going to film it, put it on the internet. It's probably going to get fuck all views. I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. You know.
Yeah.
It's
believe me, been there, done that, doing that. Actually, you know, sometimes the episodes get less than 100 listens on some platform. I always think to myself, have you ever seen that movie Lost in Translation?
Oh, fuck, I don't think so.
Lost in Translation, maybe for the audience listening, Bill Murray, Scarlett Johansson. Bill Murray's this American actor in the movie who goes over to Japan to do an advertisement, because, you know, a lot of American celebrities, they'll go to Japan and do an ad for, like, and in the movie it was for a Suntory whiskey, right? And they'll pay him $1 million over there. And it's not embarrassing for him to do an ad like that, because it's not going to be seen, you know, at home.
Yeah.
I always wonder, like, you know, maybe there's some other platform somewhere that the RSS feed is taking these podcasts out to, where, you know, in some town in Indonesia with 300,000 people in it, you know, like I'm a big hit.
You only need to make one that goes viral to like completely change your life. But I feel like if you do anything with the goal of getting success, like virality or whatever out of it, it's going to be a disappointment. Like, this is fun regardless. Like, we're sitting in a fucking lane, it's all these like Asian tourists giving us weird looks. Like, I'm drinking a warm beer. This is awesome. Yeah. You know, this is like...
Oh, that's my bad.
Yeah. No. I wasn't throwing shade, bro.
It was cold when I bought it, I swear.
No, but you know what I mean? Like, you could post this and get like 40 views and it's not going to be a shame.
Well, it's not why I do it either. And that's why, for the audience listening, not many of you are used to hearing a lot of background noise. There's a lot of background chat. Yes, there's people walking through an alleyway. Some of them are walking past us less than a metre away. Because I don't record video on these, you obviously can't see it. But just to set the scene for you. And this is fun. And this is the kind of stuff that I want to keep doing forever, no matter how big the podcast may or may not get, right? It's just the stuff I want to continue to keep doing.
Fun.
It's fun.
You know?
It really is. I mean, it's not raining.
Yeah. Life is short, man. Like, I've started a couple businesses in my life and ended up giving up on them. Not because they weren't working. Like, when I was like 18, me and my brother started this like Belgian waffle caravan, right? And it was like making good money. Like, it worked way better than we could have possibly hoped. Like, it was, at the time I could only work for minimum wage and I was making like double what I would have been making. But like, we gave up on it because we were both just like, I don't give a fuck about waffles. Like, I don't care. I don't want to be flipping waffles. Like, I just made myself like a hospo job, essentially. And it's like, I feel like you're not going to be successful in anything that you're not 100% invested in, because like, regardless of like how miserable the task is, there will be some psycho out there that is obsessed with it that you're competing with. Like, I guarantee there's people who have dedicated their whole life to waffles.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'm competing with them and I'm obviously going to lose.
Oh, shit. Yes, I do love that. Yeah. Because, the way that you're talking about the waffle business and the way that you just talked about going to 5 comedy gigs this week and them being dire and, you're obviously not getting paid from any of them. That, for me...
$40 last night, actually.
Yeah, right. Nice. High five. Woo.
Yeah, fucking crack.
So, the way that you talk about comedy is so different to the way you talk about waffles.
Yeah.
And you were making money from that.
Yeah, well, that's it. Like, that's one thing I've learned pretty much this year, was just like, there's actually no point even doing anything that you're not passionate about. Like, you can have a job to like pay for life's necessities, but
for sure.
Yeah, like, if you're, a lot of people try to start businesses because they think it'll make them heaps of money. Yeah. Rather than start a business because it'll create the life they want. And I feel like that's misguided. Yeah. At least most of the time.
Yeah, no, I can relate to that. You start a business with the virtue of wanting to grow your skill set and reach an audience and be your own boss and make your own money. And then for some people, somewhere along the line, it gets to a point where they've set themselves up for something that they didn't really want. Some of these, and I have a lot of respect for business owners. I think they're amazing to go out and do something on your own. But, is it, okay, hi. Yeah. Is it the life you really want? Some of these business owners talk about 13, 14-hour days and,
I'm from Whangarei in New Zealand, and I went to an all-boys high school, and we were pretty much pushed away from getting like higher education. All of my friends got trades, dropped out of school. Pretty much none of my friends went to university. 2 of them did, but it was after they tried to do trades and realized they hated them. Mm-hmm. It's just like a cultural thing, right? Yeah. So like, I have mates now that have done trades and they hate them, but they can make good money from doing that. Yeah. Or they have to start from scratch again in their like mid-20s, late 20s sort of thing. And so they all just, it's a trap really, because it's like, you can make like, if you can make $100K a year doing something you hate, or make $40K a year doing something you like, most people will take the first one. But that's not a sustainable way to live.
Well, it's not. And you could take that as a means to an end. Yeah. And I think you take the $40K a year gig doing something you love, and you're not thinking about, quitting that or getting to a certain point with that so that you can quit to do something else. You're doing it because you love it. Yeah. Definitely on topic for me, and I'm sure a bunch of the listeners as well. By the way, I didn't do a language warning at the start of this. I think we're dropping... Sorry. No, we're dropping a few more F-bombs than I'm normally used to, but it's totally cool. I don't really mind. Just for the audience that might be listening to this in their cars with their kids on the way to school.
Sorry, I should have probably asked what your demographic of listeners is before I started.
You know what? I
Paging.
I don't know what my demographic of listeners is.
Well, if there's 100 of them, your worst case scenario is you might 10. Lose like 4 people or something.
Yeah, there's 10 listeners. Hi to all 10 of you. No, of course. Yeah, 40%. You'd think I'd lose 40% of my listeners with it.
4%, I said.
Okay, yeah. No, for sure.
I don't know. I feel like there's too much porn on the internet for people to get offended by swear words these days.
That's so true. That's so true. I was walking past Hub Australia and I thought, who took the other bit of the sign away?
Oh, God.
Enjoying the episode so far? Be sure to follow us and leave us a review on whichever podcast platform you're listening on. Thanks, and enjoy the rest of the episode. But yeah, no, once again, it's great to be here. For anyone that's just chiming in now, we're in Hosier Lane. It's probably one of the more famous locations in Melbourne, this laneway, which is why I brought us here, because I thought I'm going to have Sean Collier on. He's a comedian. He's about to start his run at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. And I want some people to see the vibe that you bring.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty bleak vibe, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. The Comedy Fest is going to be interesting. I've heard nothing but, like, it sounds just like absolute chaos, you know. Like, I'm working full-time as well, so I'm going to be literally finish work, out flyering, perform. I've got, like, other shows that I've promised to go watch, like, most nights. So, it's going to be no sleep. But it's exciting. And I feel like, for me at least, I've realised, like, busyness is much better than boredom. Like, I'd rather be stressed and busy than bored, you know?
Yeah.
Like, everyone's different. That's not for everyone. But for me, like, I'm just that sort of dude.
Yeah. And you certainly are going to be busy, because I think when I met you, you were handing out flyers and there was dates on it, but I didn't bring a flyer with me, so I forgot the dates. What are the dates of your comedy?
27th March to the 7th of April. 11 shows.
People, if you're in Melbourne and you're listening now, if you're going to be in Melbourne during that time, you're looking for Sean Collier, the funniest Kiwi in Melbourne.
Yeah, arguably. Yeah.
But yeah, it's very... I think when we first spoke, you said it was going to be your first time doing this comedy festival, right?
Doing it's my first like solo show, like full stop. I did a one-off solo show last year. I did like 40 minutes, but I'm doing like 50 in this one, which is pretty daunting.
Have you got 50 minutes worth? Like,
oh fuck yeah, mate! I've been doing stand-up since 2016. So I've definitely, like, I'm not worried about having enough material. I am, like, terrified of forgetting what I'm saying, because, like, that's much more intimidating for me. Or, like, sometimes you lose the crowd and you can't get them back. That's only happened to me a few times ever, but it's pretty horrible. So, like, there is if you say something and you just completely lose the audience, that could be a terrible time. Yeah. Like, one time I was doing a show in Dunedin. It was going really well, right? And I was a bit drunk. And I was just like, fuck, I'm good at this. Like, on stage, like, just to myself. And I literally, the whole crowd just went, like, just frowning at me. Because they're Kiwis, right? So they're like, they hate when people are stoked on themselves. Like, I don't know. It's like a cultural thing. Like, we're the, like, antithesis of Americans in that regard, So it was just, And then every joke I said for the rest of the set, they just were silent, like, just out of spite for me.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah, so, that's pretty interesting, actually. Yeah. So it's going to be your first solo show, and obviously it's on mind to make sure that you keep the audience engaged. From what I've seen of you, I don't think there's an issue with keeping the audience engaged. I guess it's just probably a comedy festival audience. At what level of expectations does an audience like that have?
Well, I'm hoping pretty low. I mean, it's going to be interesting. The way that I've sold the most tickets at this stage was, like, posting in Facebook groups and giving people, like, discounts and stuff. Because I have a few friends that are, like, proper successful comedians, not like me. And I, like, I called one of them, actually, because Joe Damon, you probably don't know who he is. He's a Kiwi, but he's doing really well. And I like, rang him up and I was like, asked for some advice, and he said that the way he sold out his first festival when he had, like, no fame or anything was he Instagram messaged every person in Melbourne who had Kiwi in their, like, Insta bio, and, like, just asked them to come. Like, and I was like, fuck, that's, like, I respect that, right? So I've been trying to do that a little bit, but yeah, you got to be hungry it's a rat race. You got to really, it's competitive.
Yeah, it's a hustle for sure, and that's part of the joy of it. I think part of what attracts you to it is that you have that hustler mentality. You mentioned earlier that you're entrepreneurial at heart. The comedy allows you to sort of still continue to exercise that entrepreneurial hustle side of yourself, but also do something that you really enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a business, it's a terrible, terrible business. But, it won't always. But it's feast or famine, Like, the only comedians I know are either broke or rich. I don't know anyone that makes a decent living.
How do they get who's in the middle?
There's no one in the middle. You're either selling out at least, like, town halls, or you're not selling any tickets. And I'm not selling any tickets, but one day.
Yeah, I mean, I did tell you that there was it would help to renew your QR code.
Oh, yeah, no, I sorted that. I got bloody scammed. They made me pay $50, the dogs.
Right, okay. Oh, by the way, audience, we've got someone doing some graffiti above us. So if you're hearing a can rattling right now, that's because someone's doing a tag.
I love this city.
Yeah.
Vibrant.
You know, Melbourne does have a certain vibe about it, doesn't it?
Bro, I honestly reckon it's one of the best cities on the planet. I mean, if you look at the quality of life you get in a lot of the cities that were really popular like 30, 40 years ago, like they've, you know, like London, and so I don't think living in London now is anything like it was in like the 80s or something. But I think Melbourne is sort of in a place where London might have been in the 80s. You know, like it's on the up. It's a great place.
Enjoy it while you can, people.
Yeah.
And you were talking a little bit before, you've been doing comedy since 2016. I'm curious to know, when did you start comedy? What was that journey like? What brought you to Melbourne, and how long has that been? Just give us a timeline for the audience that don't know you.
So I came to Melbourne in May last year. So it's just coming up a year over here.
Yep.
So I moved from Whangarei to Christchurch when I was 17. Fucking chaos over there. Yeah. Yeah, so I moved to Christchurch when I was 17 because I wanted to take a gap year. I was planning on going to law school, but I got cold feet like a week before the course started.
Law school?
Yeah, I'm a qualified lawyer.
Fuck out of here.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah. But yeah, so I was going to go to law school, got cold feet, moved to Christchurch because they just had the earthquake a couple of years before, and there was heaps of like work for young men there. So I moved there with my brother, and I worked just like 5 different jobs over the course of the year. It was like the most depressing shit ever. Like it was just awful minimum wage jobs in a city where I knew literally nobody. It was very bleak, and I was always sort of interested in doing stand-up. And I figured it was the perfect opportunity because I literally had like the worst life. There was nothing. I had no fun, no friends around. Just literally work a minimum wage job, then come home. So I was like, if I go up on stage and bomb, it can't possibly be worse than what I do anyway. So I went to this open mic, and it was at a place called Alvarado's, which is like a Mexican restaurant. There were people having dinner. It was just, it was bad, man. And I'll never forget, like I got there, and the dude before me, he was like this guy with severe autism. He was doing like Chewbacca impressions to just like silence and people like eating dinner and stuff. And I was just like, this is so horrible. And then I went up and I did a joke about, I think the first joke I did, it was like, I've had some pretty traumatic experiences since I moved here. Like the other day I tried working, and I was like 17, and the crowd just like laughed. And I was just such a rush, you know? It was like, getting that laugh, because no one had got any laughs the whole night. Like it was one of the worst gigs, still one of the worst gigs I've ever seen. Right. And then, me getting that laugh, I was just hooked after that. Yeah. But then I got offered another show, and it was so much worse than that one. Like I got offered a show at that gig, at a different one. I went to it, and it was this pub in Christchurch, which is like, it was like 4 like farmers and swan dries who didn't know there was a show on, and it was at their like local, so they were like pissed off, and like they put me in the corner, and I was just talking for like 4 minutes to just angry like old white farmers just glaring at me, just like stony faced, and it was so traumatizing. I didn't gig again for like a year. Whoa. But yeah, and then I moved to Wellington, and
oh yeah, man, that's like quitting. So you quit once?
Yeah, well, no, it was more I planned to do it again, but Christchurch, the comedy scene when I was there at least, it was just so bleak. I was like, this is all, I don't want to be involved. Like, it was a bad time. But yeah, and then in Wellington the next year, I entered the Raw Comedy Quest competition. I made the finals, and then the year after I entered and I won it. So that sort of was how I got involved, really.
Yeah, wow. And so which year was it that you won it?
2018.
And then you came to Melbourne in...
last year, 2023.
Okay, so in the 5-year gap between you winning that prize...
Yeah, it was a national competition. So I won the Wellington one, and then I got sent to Auckland, and I got runner-up in the national final, and I got $750, which I was like, made it. Like, made it. Still the most I've ever been paid for a gig. But yeah, it was mean. But I was in...
So what does that mean? That means that at the time, in that national competition, you were judged the second best comedian.
Second best amateur comedian.
In New Zealand.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it was the peak of my career, to be honest. I thought it was just the beginning at the time, but 5 years later or whatever it is, 6 years later, very well might have been the peak.
I think there's something to be said about the signs and the clues that we pick up throughout our careers and whatever it is we're doing. that give us just enough to keep us going, you know. And we sort of hit this peak. And yeah, like you said, it was the peak of your career, and you're like, yes, and you're thinking only up from here. Whilst I don't know if you call it the universe or whatever's thinking, no, you're good at this, but we knew we needed to give you something to keep you going.
Yeah, well, and that's actually like sort of how it felt. Like if I didn't get that win early on, it's very possible that I would have given up. But now I'm sort of chasing the proverbial dragon, you know. But it's like I know how good it can be, so like it helps. I'm happy to do these bad gigs for as long as it takes, because when it's good, it's going to be great, and I'm going to have that vindication of being like, that grind was worth it.
I feel like it is worth it to you at the moment. There's an element of it that you, like you've already said, that you enjoy, that I feel like you'll miss. I feel like you'll miss something when you walk into a room and say hello and people start laughing. I feel like you're the kind of character that'll say something to the crowd to turn them sour so that you can warm them back up again. Yeah,
literally. You're bang on there. Well, a lot of actual professional comedians complain about that. Like I saw like Louis C.K. once talking about how it's really difficult for him to test material because all his audiences are already fans, so they just love everything he says. So he's got to really go out of his way to find like shitty gigs where he can actually like see if stuff works. So like, yeah, I'm obviously thankfully not at that point. but like for me, it's the opposite. You know, it's like if you're doing a gig to 4 people in a pub and no one wants to be there, and you get a laugh out of them, that's a great bit. Like that's a, you know, you've really got something there. Yeah. And so it's just sort of how you frame it, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I agree. Wonder if you get to that point and you have to start like putting on, you know, makeup and prosthetics and stuff just to look different so that you can show up to a comedy club and people don't recognize you.
Yeah.
Because, it's a problem. You know, I think I saw something the other day, and before I even met you, I saw something about, was it Chris Hart or what is his name?
Kevin Hart?
Kevin Hart. Yeah. Kevin Hart. And how Kevin Hart...
All right,
we got drama here. We got drama.
I think they're friends.
Yeah.
Either that or that kid's about to get a hiding.
I saw something about Kevin Hart, and they were talking about how Kevin Hart, before he goes on a big comedy tour, he likes to go and test his material out at little local comedy clubs. Yeah. But then it didn't occur to me until now, just hearing you talk about that. Like, well, you're Kevin Hart. Like, of course.
He does bloody stadiums, you know? So, yeah, if you have a stadium of adoring fans, you go up, it's one of those, you say hello and they're like, woo! So it's not a gauge. And then if you release that on the internet, it'll feel like it's gone well, and then everyone will be like, this is awful. And it'll get, you'll get terrible reviews and stuff. So it's really the only way to do it if you're famous.
So you think the internet is just a more savage benchmarking environment, potentially?
Yeah, I'd say, well, like, you know, if you put a special out, like, do you know who Matt Rife is?
Heard of.
Yeah. He's the handsome comedian of America. He did a Netflix special recently, and it was super controversial because he basically, like, I think he realized that all of his fans are like women that want to fuck him, and he like sort of came out trying to be a bit like controversial, doing a bit of like misogynistic material and stuff, basically like alienating his own fan base. Yeah. And the internet like blew up about it. But it's like that's one of those things where I don't think he was doing the Kevin Hart methodology for that. I think he was probably Yeah, no, that's pretty interesting, actually. I feel in a way this episode might alienate some of my audience. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Well, I can stop swearing, but it's a bit, I feel like we're a bit far in for that.
No, absolutely not. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go in and
just beat them.
I'm not going to beat them. I'm going to cut out every F-bomb that you've dropped, every fuck that you've dropped, right? And then it's going to sound like that you're stuttering.
Interesting.
But cool. So you came to Melbourne last year, and the plan here was to take on the comedy world.
Oh, mate, like, there's a myriad of reasons. A big part, to be honest, is just the cost of living in New Zealand is like untenable now. Like, I was working full-time as a lawyer, and I was paycheck to paycheck just because Auckland's outrageous. The thing that actually made me move was I brought a kumara, like a sweet potato, and it cost $4.50 for one sweet potato. And I was just like, I literally booked flights that night. I was like, I'm done. Like and there's like a lot of reasons for that. Like, I don't want to get it. I could rant about the economic state of affairs in New Zealand for like hours. But that was honestly a main one. Another one is obviously the comedy. I wanted to do my first solo show in a place where I don't have any fans, which sounds sort of masochistic. But if I did it in New Zealand, I could, sell tickets to like all my friends or whatever. Yeah. And Yeah, I want it to be hard. You know, I want to because if I do well in this festival, it'll be like a proper achievement. It'll be like, wow, that was really difficult. You know, I don't know anyone in the city and I somehow made it work. So, yeah, and New Zealand has a culture of we have this thing we call like crowded house syndrome. They were a band that was like
crowded house.
Yeah. So that they were trying to get popular in New Zealand for ages and just failing. And then they went overseas and they just blew up straight away.
Good band.
Yeah, great band. So it's like... I don't know, there's a culture in New Zealand of like tall poppy.
Right, yeah.
Like people don't want other people to succeed. So I'm I'm keen to succeed away from New Zealand and then go back all victorious. It might just be like a delusional fantasy.
No, man, you will get tomatoes thrown at you back.
Yeah.
As soon as the audience find out that you're from there, tomatoes. They'll bring you back down to earth.
Oh, for sure.
But I think it's easier for athletes, for example, if we compare a performer, you know, a comedian or any type of stage performer, live stage performer to an athlete. An athlete can always go, yeah, all right, I ran 100 kilometers the other day. I'm going to run 200. You know, they don't have to move overseas to do that. You know, they can just make the challenge harder by stepping up what they did. It's interesting that you say that for a comedian. In order to continue to grind and continue to work out whether your material is actually good enough for any audience, you have to move around and you have to go and find new audiences that have never heard your stuff before, because the other ones are biased, like your friends, for example, they're biased.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't want to be just a New Zealand comedian. Like, I'd rather have success in Australia, to be honest. Like, I don't want to be just not like dissing people that are New Zealand famous, but I don't know. I don't want to limit myself, which is, again, it sounds delusional because I'm like out here selling like 40 tickets, but like, yeah, you'll see.
I think it's not a rare sort of desire for people to want to be, to make it internationally.
Well, I actually,
from New Zealand or...
I don't necessarily want to be Kevin Hart or anything. Yeah. I think...
No, that'd suck.
Yeah, I think that'd be terrible.
And Richard suck, yeah.
Like, no, like there's an optimal level of anything, you know, and there are people that are too famous for sure. There's definitely such a thing as too famous.
Kevin Hart could just walk into a room, get any woman he wants.
He's like 5'4". I don't know if that's true.
That's probably somewhat true, because remember, the funny guy kind of has a thing.
But yeah, like, I think the optimal for a comedian would be to have like a cult following of like a few 100,000 people spread out around the world that would enable you to do like tours, but you can go to the supermarket and people aren't freaking out, you know?
Yes.
That would be my like ideal. And that's not that, I know people that have that, and it's not that unattainable, you know? So yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to be, Hollywood A-list, and I'm never going to be, because listen to my voice, you know.
Well,
it's a bloody...
I don't know, Mark Wahlberg might have a thing for New Zealand accents, and suddenly you might be getting a call.
Yeah, maybe.
It's the start of the next TED.
Oh, God. Just a Kiwi teddy bear smoking bongs.
Speaking of which, what is a guilty pleasure for you? You know, I guess you're spending a lot of your time and energy and money on the comedy thing. You know, do you ever just sort of get home and kick your feet up on the couch and go, for something?
I eat a lot of popcorn. I love getting wasted.
That's no secret, actually, because if you go through your Instagram reels, and we're going to share your social media, you're pretty candid about that.
Well, I mean, you know, you got to talk about, like, the funniest thing is always whatever's most authentic. So I'm not, you know, you can't just lie about your life and expect people to relate to it. So I just sort of have to go with whatever I'm thinking about, and like, that my brain is often, I don't know. I like getting wasted. Obviously, like, in moderation, and by moderation I mean like I take lengthy breaks and then I go on like quite heavy benders. That's the way to do it. You know, like I did the first 2 months of the year I was sober, but for the comedy fest I'm probably gonna be drinking every night. You know, and then I'll probably go through another like long sober stint.
I'm kind of glad I caught you before that.
Yeah.
Although
coherently,
I think that you're going to be, at some point throughout that period, you're going to get funnier.
Oh yeah.
And then where does the bell curve kind of hit? I remember this one time, for example, my daughter's mum and I went. It was a Monday, and we were driving down Chapel Street, and this is actually close to 20 years ago. This is like 18 years ago, right? I'm aging myself now, right? So we were driving down Chapel Street, and it says $6 jugs of Carlton Draft. Yeah.
Oh, stop it.
Yeah. At the bowling alley, right?
Oh, I love bowling now.
And it was strike bowling. And it used to be strike bowling, and then they turned it into a gym, and so it's no longer there, right? So we can't go there right after this recording and do that, but we can try, because there's one at Melbourne Central if you want to go bowling afterwards. And here's the thing. We paid for the bowling. We got the shoes. We set up the lane, straight to the bar, get our first jug, right? And we're about 4 jugs in now, and about game 4, so we're doing about a jug a game.
Yeah.
And I'm bowling strikes, and I'm telling you, if it's not a strike, it's a spare, and I am absolutely on fire.
Yeah.
And I'm half cut.
It happens with bowling.
By the 6th game, gutter balls.
Oh, yeah.
It was gutter ball, gutter ball, gutter ball, and I think, damn, I found my peak. It was 4 jugs. Mind you, we'd split it in half, so I'd had about 2 of the 4 jugs, and I was 4 games in, and that's where I found my optimum.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's definitely comparable. No, like in all sincerity, I've had the somewhat problematic realization that my limit is pretty far for that. Like I've had I've done gigs, man, where I like there was this one gig I did in Wellington where it was literally like everyone was pre-drinking for a music festival. So it was a homegrown music festival, which is a great festival. I love it. But I had a gig that night, so I couldn't do it. I had to do like 20 minutes. I was probably like 21. I was like, well, I'm not going to miss the pre-drinks. Like, obviously, it's going to be a great day. It was like sunny. I was like, fuck, I'm going to this party with everyone. So I just spent the whole day just on it. And I was doing like MDMA and stuff. Everyone was going to a festival. So I was partying like I was preparing for this music festival. It got to like 3 in the arvo and everyone goes to the festival and I'm just there just hammered, you know, like by myself. And I was like, I got to perform in 3 hours. And I just like thought about it and I was like, well, if I stop, I'm going to be like hungover on stage and that's going to be terrible. So I just soldiered through. I like went to the pub with a couple mates and like I went on stage, like I reckon I'd had like 20 drinks and like I had a coffee at like 5 p.m. to like sober me up or whatever. And I went up on stage. It was like the best gig I'd done that year. Like it was crazy, like because the crowd could tell I was hammered, but like I didn't forget any of my material or anything because I was like so relaxed. I think there's a direct correlation between how relaxed you are to how well the set goes. So partially like the other night why that worked was because I was expecting it to be terrible anyway. Yeah. So I had and because the other 2 comedians had bombed, there was no standard. Everyone was expecting it to be awful. Yeah. I just went up chill as, you know, I was just like, the worst case scenario is I have the same experience the other 2 dudes just had. Yeah.
But I've known you for all of less than 3 days, and you've come across to me as nothing but chill. Obviously, the first meeting with you was you were on stage. You hadn't met me. We met afterwards. Then there's now, and there's nothing but chill oozing from you. I can't imagine that you would ever find yourself in a position where you're backstage packing your dacks.
Oh no, it happens, mate. I had a professional comedian tell me once, like, if you're not nervous before like a gig, that's like a problem. You should be nervous. It's high stakes. Because I asked her, she's like a real.
That was real throwing you under the bus, bro.
No. So she's like a real popular TV comedian in New Zealand. She's been doing it like 30 years. And I was like backstage with her, and she was just having a wine, like chatting, and she was going on stage in like 2 minutes. I was like, "Are you not like? Do you get nervous?" And she was like, "Oh, hell yeah." Like, if you don't get nervous, like, that's a serious problem. Like, you should be nervous. And I was like, all right, that's good. Because, yeah, I do get nervous, but my whole stage persona is really chill. So I have to just, like, swallow it, you know. And I've found that the more nervous I am, the worse I do. So it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, I had a gig in Auckland a couple of weeks ago, and my mum and 4 of my aunties came, and my girlfriend came, and her mum came. And I was just like, this is hell. Like, really? You know, I was backstage just like, no, you know.
I was like, you've got a girlfriend?
Yeah. Yeah, people are always shocked. But yeah, and that's it. It went okay, but it was nowhere near as good as it would have been if I was chill. Because, like, for example, like a heckler said something to me, nothing that was like needed to be shut down or anything. But it was like afterwards I was thinking of heaps of clever things I could have said, and I was like, if I had been relaxed on stage, I would have just taken, because time speeds up on stage. Yeah. If I just took like 1 second to actually think about what they'd said, I could have thought of a witty response and got a laugh. Yeah. But it was just that thing of like being too nervous to immediately try to respond. Yeah, sort of through the gig.
No. I can relate to that because the other night it was being hosted by another comedian, Igor, and he did the opposite of heckling. He sort of pointed out to a few people in the audience, and at one stage he just looked at me and said something, and I was like, fuck, whatever you do, don't, like, no.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in the audience. I'm not here to be in the spotlight.
Yeah.
And then afterwards I was thinking, fuck, I could have said that, and I could have said that.
Yeah. Yeah, I generally tend to not interact with the crowd unless it's something that needs to be spoken about.
What needs to be spoken about?
If you have someone that's being real disruptive, or if there's just a really good joke that you think of that involves a crowd member, that's not going to be like ruin their life. Yeah, But totally. Generally, I just try to do my material.
Yeah, very good.
No, well, because I think of it for I'm an empathetic person, man. I'm like, if I go to a comedy show, I don't want someone turning the whole crowd on me.
Oh, totally.
And like most people, there's a reason they're not on stage. Yeah.
No, Igor did it tastefully, and bless him, he did have to try and buy some time for some reason. It felt like.
Yeah, there was someone on their way. They didn't end up getting there on time anyway,
right.
But.
If you haven't already, find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, or TikTok, where you can catch additional content and grace us with your thoughts. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of the episode. But I think, and what I ended up saying, I think whether it was to yourself or there was another comedian there at the time, James Jenkins. Yeah. Not as white as his name suggests.
He's funny. Yeah.
He is very funny. And I spoke to James, and hopefully I can have James on the podcast as well at some point. Maybe I can have the three of us together to get some banter time.
I'll be keen.
We talked about a bunch of things to do with comedy afterwards, actually. I forgot what I was going to say. We've got some people right behind us now. Maybe I'm getting nervous. Oh, no. It's a tough gig, and I think that's what I was going to say. I was going to say it's probably the toughest gig in show business. There's show business, and then there's comedy. There's everything else. There's sports. I could easily go out and play a game of something and suck and get booed, but it wouldn't feel as bad as getting booed
it's
up
very
on stage.
personal. It's very personal. Because you think of most people's jokes, they come from like deep places of insecurity, or they're self-analyzing, so it's
That's
like
what it is.
The saddest ones are always like when someone does a self-depreciating joke and no one laughs. And it's like, because a lot of like self-deprecation is like someone being like, well, there's this horrible, unchangeable aspect of my personality or, life that like at least I can get a laugh out of it. And then you don't get a laugh and it's just like, yeah. But yeah, it's like, if you look at like music, man, I did a joke the other night about like, when I do like really bad gigs, like what if I just joined a band all those years ago instead of bloody tried to do comedy? Because it's like, if you're performing music to like 3 people, it's so much less sad than if you're telling jokes to 3 people. It's just, it's just not. Yeah, whenever the audience is like, you could just be having a conversation. It's like that small. It gets quite dark.
Yeah. I want to change the pace a little bit. I'm seeing a lot of people walking around supporting different Formula One teams, because the Formula One is on in Melbourne this weekend as well. Yeah. It is. And, I'm curious to know, maybe, because I'm a big fan of the Formula One. I think, like a lot of people, I actually used to watch it when I was a kid. And I used to be really into it. I used to have Ayrton Senna posters on my wall.
Really?
Yeah. Especially because of the one that he died, the Herald Sun newspaper here, they used to do like full-page poster pieces of famous sports people. Yeah. And, I got really into it. And then because of the time zone and everything, it got a bit boring. I went to uni and got off it. Then a few years ago, Drive to Survive came on Netflix and got heaps of people into Formula One because they gave behind-the-scenes access. And so I'm sort of sitting here, I'm waiting for tomorrow race day. But I'm wondering, like, what else do you have going on in your life that's outside of show business that you sort of look to maybe have a bit of you time, like unwind?
I'm not a very balanced person, to be honest, mate.
I'm getting high.
For me, my life over the last few years has just been like big sort of projects with clear end dates, and then like long trip. Like I've done like long trips overseas. Like last year I went to like 15 countries. Spent like my life savings. Destroyed my life. It was great. It was so much fun. Yeah. But
isn't it?
Yeah, it's like there's nothing better. Like
but you've got to go have some stories out of it, surely.
Yeah. I've got heaps of material.
Great.
I mean, I had a lawyer say to me once. He said, the only real holiday you get as a lawyer is quitting, because it's just the nature of the work that, like, if you take like 3 weeks off, it's just going to pile up and you're going to be thinking about it in the back of your head. You're not really going to be able to relax. And so I've sort of have that mentality with everything. Like, I think after the Comedy Fest, I'll probably take like a little excursion somewhere, take a break. But like, yeah, I'm a very big purveyor of just quitting your job, quitting all of your responsibilities, and just taking like a proper few months just off, and then going back into it with a vengeance. You know, I feel like that's more productive for me, at least, than just trucking along for years and being like vaguely miserable about it. Like, I go from being a workaholic to having no job. Like that. Yeah, I much prefer that. But in terms of like hobbies, mate, like honestly, you know, do a bit of boxing, stand up. Since I moved over here, I've had a very boring life. Like I work at a law firm. I do gigs in the evenings. I work out in the mornings. It's very repetitive, but like I'm getting things done. You know, I'm working towards certain goals.
I'm still tripping that you work at a law firm.
Oh, it's crazy. It's absolutely, it's just one of those things. Like,
how do they take your comedy career?
I waited till my probationary period was over before I let anyone at the office know.
The old probationary period.
Yeah, I didn't tell anyone that I do stand up. I didn't let anyone follow me on social media, and then like after 6 months ticked over and they couldn't fire me easily. I started following people on socials.
You started to become fireable.
Yeah, exactly. Like, all jokes aside, that's like but I did a joke the other day. I put it on my Instagram about like work shootings. It was about like,
I saw that.
It was like, why are there no work shootings and so many school shootings, blah, blah, blah. And my boss at work, who's like this really like experienced lawyer, she like came up to me, she's like, I hope you're not going to shoot up the office. And I was like, it's so I don't know how that would have gone down if I was in my like first month of employment, but like I'm good at my job as well. That helped, you know.
Yeah, because you touched on it earlier. We've all got to do something for a crust, you know, to make ends meet. And I think the thing about the podcast is that when I first started this, I kind of fell in love with the idea of what you just touched on. Actually, you just touched on, you know, just quitting your job and just going for it with something. And actually, the first few episodes of the podcast were people who did that with adventures. You know, someone who quit his teaching career to go and volunteer in Tanzania, and then, you know, was so inspired out of that, took up photography and then filmmaking. Yeah. Episode 2 was with, I'm not sure if she was working or if she had anything to quit, but she just decided to go hitchhiking and hitchhike her way from Finland, like Helsinki, to Morocco.
Oh, wow.
And
that's a nudge.
Yeah, had a bit of a drug habit thing on the way that she needed some help for, and strangers came to her aid, and that's when she fell in love with humanity, because, you know, strangers can help you in times of need. And who else? Octavi, during a 2008 or something financial crisis, he had a really great job. A lot of his friends were being let go from their jobs, but he was super safe, and he decided to quit his job against everyone in his personal life's advice because he was bored, and he got on a motorbike and travelled from Barcelona through to South Africa. Right. And
so this is a very different episode of the podcast.
Well, it totally is, but, you know, I feel like one of the things that I really love about the podcast is that I feel like there's common ground in everyone's story. Right? And I think you touch on things that are totally on their vibe. I do like the idea of quitting your job and just going somewhere. I love that. I've gotten to a phase, you know, I'm probably like, what am I? Maybe like 20 years. No, I'm not 20 years older than you. I'm more than that now.
No, you're not. Well, how old are you?
No.
I'm 20.
10.
I'm 26.
13 years old. There we go. My math is really bad. You can tell I'm getting Alzheimer's. Early onset.
Oh, same. The amount of concussions I've had. Jesus.
Self-made concussions?
Yeah, I played rugby for many years.
Oh, you did?
I nearly died in a rugby game once.
Really?
Yeah. Wow. Literally, just copped a knee to the back of the head, woke up in hospital like 6 hours later. Didn't know who my parents were and stuff. Like, it was,
I think it was about to make a point.
Yeah, sorry, mate. No. You
hijacked.
Yeah.
And I think it's when we have experiences like the one that you're talking about, right, that we start to think about life differently. You know, we see time as limited. We see opportunities as here for the taking. You know, things become more black and white for us. You were touching on, you know, having a job. I just remembered, I was thinking while you were talking about some of the saddest people I've ever met in my life are those that are waiting for long service leave, you know. And,
oh, God.
And I'm like, so what are you doing here? Are you happy here? Are you looking for, you know, are you feeling fulfilled in your career? I'm thinking... They're saying to me, oh no, in about 4 years' time I get long service leave.
Oh, that's so bleak. That's just that's dark.
So you mentioned that you've been doing some bleak comedy shows lately.
Yeah.
But to me, every single person on those stages, they've got way more going for them. Even if they, if
they
material
definitely
sucks.
don't. Let's just clarify that they definitely don't. Like, if you had spent enough time around the amateur comedy community, mate, you would not be saying that. But no, carry on, please. No.
You know what? That was the romantic in me.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah.
And look, I do put a romantic lens on things, but I'm glad I've got the yin to the yang here to bring me back down to reality.
No, like there is some. For a lot of people, it's literally just like their last or only thing that they have. You know, like there's nothing good in their life at all, and they're like, well, maybe if I can get some laughs out of it, and then they can't even get laughs out of it, but they just do it anyway. Like but I enjoy seeing that. I don't know. It gives you perspective as well. Like seeing a lot of people that have just objectively horrible lives. It really makes, you know, because it's very easy to be ungrateful, especially like in the world of social media and all, you know. The amount of times that I just see like an 18-year-old millionaire and I just want to fucking, you know, shoot up a workplace. But yeah,
this might be a good time to plug the law firm.
No, I think we'll leave that out.
Pass. Yeah.
No, I love all my workmates, genuinely.
Yeah.
I'm not going to murder anyone.
I like that. I like that you brought gratitude into it, because it's something that I think about and we talk about a bit on the podcast for different reasons in different scenarios. Do you think that you are grateful for something?
Oh, I'm, you know, in my good moments, I'm grateful for everything.
Yeah.
But I think there's also like a degree of, if you're too, that's stupid. I was going to say, like, I have this irrational fear that if I'm too grateful, I won't be sufficiently motivated to improve my life. Because if you're sitting there like in appreciation all the time. But I think that's really unrealistic, because like most people are in a space of gratitude for less than 5 minutes a day. Yeah. You know, and it's not really going to change anything other than just make things better. Yeah. So I have been trying to be more grateful, but I'm a pretty neurotic person generally, which is why my material's often so dark.
Yeah, I love your material actually, and it's neurotic. There's a lot of disillusioned youth that comes out in you, but in a time where it's perfectly okay to be disillusioned, but it's so wonderful that you see the funny side of a lot of it.
Well, I mean, you have to. You know, I think my generation's been seriously fucked over in a lot of ways. You know, not necessarily by anyone in particular, but just by like the forces of the world and society.
I saw something the other day though. This very attractive young Asian woman had done some video on TikTok that got 9 million views, and now she's made $1 million out of it. Oh, and that was her.
But, you know, everyone can't go viral. And everyone can, like, I had I had one of my uncles who's like a boomer once tell me, he's like, yeah, well, like, you know, we got to buy houses for like fucking 20 grand, but you guys can make apps. And I was like, mate, do you know how hard it is to make it? It's like, you brought a house from like mowing lawns, like, you know, and you're telling me to make an app. Like, it's just so unrealistic. It's like, yeah, like the older generations, they got to create generational wealth by just doing basic medial tasks.
And not getting wasted.
No, well, like, they did get wasted all the time.
Did they?
You know, yeah. At least my parents did.
Well, yeah. Well, if you watch Gatsby, they did. No,
but you got, like, proportionately, like, the cost of rent and the amount that you earn and the cost of food and everything, like, you can see it very clearly on a chart. Like, the cost of living is, like, I think, depending on the country, like 4 times higher than it was in, like, the 60s.
Yeah, it's wild.
There are many reasons to be angry, but you're completely right with, like, there's never been more opportunities as well.
Yeah. And that's just what I try and look at, but fuck, you're right. What am I talking about? See, that's my romantic lens again. I think that's why we...
No, you are right, though. Like, and if you were in that headspace of being like, oh, you could become a millionaire overnight with one good TikTok video, like, you know, that's the headspace you want to be in, because that's, you know, reality is subjective. Yeah. You can think like, oh, like my generation's been screwed over, like I'm never going to own it. The amount of people I meet, they're like, I'm never going to own a house. And it's like, well, yeah, you're not, because you think it. Like, you know, it's difficult, because I sit in both camps. Like, I have this arguably delusional thing where I'm like, I'm going to make it. But at the same time, I'm like, our generation is ruined, you know? And they're both right.
Yeah, I actually don't see them as wrong. I think work ethic is probably a big thing that hasn't changed. I think people that are willing to knuckle down and do the work still open doors for themselves.
Oh, for sure.
And whether those doors are walked through is another story. But I think nothing opens more doors than good work and community, mingling with the right people. You touched on before that you're friends with some comedians that are on their way to great success, if not there already. How does that help you to have people like that in your life?
Well, especially like coming from New Zealand, there's not really any comedians apart from Flight of the Conchords. Flight of the Conchords is the one exception.
Yeah.
Other than that, there's pretty much no comedians that have made major international success. So it's very easy to be in a mindset of like...
They were good though, weren't they?
Oh, they're so good.
Yeah.
I love them, man. But yeah, like now, like I know quite a few like young... And by quite a few, I mean like 2 like young Kiwi comedians that are like really doing well on the international circuit. So I'm like, it's possible. Yeah. And it's just bridging that gap of being like, right, I knew this person when they were nothing and now they've become something. And it's like you see the exact like trajectory and you're like, I could just follow that,
Yeah.
It just makes it seem a whole lot more possible.
Yeah, can we keep doing this when you finally make it? Can we make sure we come back to Hosier Lane? This is
for sure. We'll have a proper crowd and stuff.
Yeah, we'll have the lane closed off by police.
Yeah.
There'll be a helicopter flying above.
2030, we'll do this again. Same day. Save the date.
Save the date.
Yeah.
I feel like we're turning into those people that say, hey, if you don't have like a boyfriend or if you're not married by the time you're 30... maybe we should just,
Oh, yeah. God. The pacts people make these days, eh?
And so what's a pact that you've made with yourself?
So this is a thing that I've been thinking about recently. I was watching an interview of someone, I actually can't remember who it was, but they were talking about like the main like factor or variable that they've noticed in people being successful is just persistence. Is just like saying to yourself, I'm going to do this till it works. And that's the only thing that you need, really. It's like if you have any sort of like ability to self-reflect and improve, all you have to do is not give up. Like when I say I've had failed businesses, what I mean is we gave up on them because, So it's like, yeah, that's sort of where my head's been at. I'm like, now I view things like it's only worth starting if you're going to do it till it works. And that way there's no actual possibility of failure. And the only thing in my life that I've found at this relatively early point in my life that I can say that about is comedy. Like I was not going to do waffles till they worked. They were working, and I was like, this is lame, So yeah, I feel like the threshold for giving up has to be extremely far.
Yeah.
For it to be actually successful. And it's like that with anything. Like if you see any like super successful business, it's always like some story of someone being like psychopathically obsessed with it, Like Amazon was like, he was working out of a garage for like years and years, like borrowing money from all his friends and stuff, It's always, and you look at those things and you're like, how on earth, why would you resort to those lengths for something, you're selling books online, but it's...
because you believed in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I feel sorry for people that don't have something like that.
Oh, wow, yeah. Yeah, me too, actually. I started the podcast in 2019. I did a few episodes. I was only set up to do face-to-face. So when the pandemic struck, I dropped it and released those episodes really slowly and then just dropped it all together. Then went to Europe, came back, and, I came back in a very different place. I came back broke, single, whereas went there in a relationship with money,
wow.
And I had met some really great people along the way, some who are listening to the podcast, right now. And I thought, yeah, that's the thing I like. That's what I love. Of all the projects that I've done, because I was talking to you off air about the fact that I used to teach people how to skateboard. I've written a children's book. That's no secret. The audience has heard about that and a few times now as well. I gave up on the children's book because I wasn't enjoying it. And where is it now? Skate lessons, well, you can't do that forever. Like you said, you get injured, you get fatigued. But the podcast is something that I felt like I could really do and continue to do forever. But I went really hard last year, and then I got to a point where I was working full time. I had, I think, published by about, 19 episodes of the podcast at the time. And I just decided it was time to let my hair down. And so I started partying really hard. From about August till about last Friday.
Yeah. Is that how you ended up at that show? Because you were there by yourself.
Yeah,
right?
I was. I was hoping to meet someone there that then couldn't make it.
Right.
And it wasn't a date. It was just a mate.
Yeah.
And I didn't care because I don't give a fuck. I just go anywhere on my own and just do anything I want on my own.
Yeah.
I don't let someone being there or coming stop me from doing something I wanted to do anyway.
Very healthy.
But yeah, it's intimidating when you're on your own and you're sitting there and the comedian like points at you and starts talking and the crowd's watching and you're like, fuck.
Mm-hmm.
But I was talking to a mate of mine last year who actually lives in New Zealand. He's an Irish guy from Dublin. G'day, Dave, if you're listening. Dave doesn't listen. But I was talking to him about the podcast and I said, Dave, I don't know if I can keep doing this. You know, it's a lot of work, you know, trying to find guests, you know, doing the recording. I love the production part of it, by the way. It's the most fun. But then the post-production, it's a very lonely process. I'm sitting in front of an editing suite, sort of just like cutting away.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's pretty lonely. And then I invest my whole weekend doing that. And then I go back to work and et cetera, et cetera. And he goes, whatever you do, don't drop it. So, all right, tell me more. Well, if you quit, it's over. But if you keep going, there's a small chance it might turn into something someday. And I thought to myself, that's the advice I needed. That's it in a nutshell, you know? Yeah. If you give up on something, you won't know how close you were to succeeding. And I was at a meetup the other day. It was for design, and this designer was talking about this thing that he designed and how it was a big failure, and he had all the plans for it on paper. And while he was on stage delivering how much of a failure it was, as a bit of a show to the audience, he ripped it all up in front of them. Yeah. And then the next speaker came on and said, actually, that was a brilliant idea. You could have sold that to Qantas. Yeah. And he didn't know.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
He didn't. People don't know how close they are to that next break or the next milestone. You're runner-up in the amateur competition, which might not be the big break, but might be the thing that's just enough to keep you going that
yeah, exactly.
A little bit longer.
I feel like I think failure isn't really real. It's the giving up is because any task you only really fail when you give up on it. Even like a company that goes bankrupt, even in that situation, you could easily get it. Well, not easily, but like, you know, there are enough stories where people have like come back from bankruptcy and made like really successful companies and stuff. You know, it's a real different frame of mind when you actually think about it like that, eh?
Yeah. You know what? Fuck you.
What?
So did I say that out loud?
Yeah.
What I actually meant to say was you lied at the beginning.
What do you mean?
Because I said, well, usually this podcast is, you know, I record with people who are travelers and adventurers and have these really inspiring and amazing stories. And you said, well, you're not going to get that today.
No, well, like...
And this has probably been one of the best conversations I've had.
All right, so I watched a video of Bill Burr talking recently.
I love Bill Burr, by the way.
Huge fan of him. And he was talking about stand-up, and he was saying, like, he lived on a futon till he was 36, and he was getting paid, like, $8 for gigs. And he had, like, a girlfriend he was living with, and he, like, came home real stoked and was, like, dancing in his kitchen, and she was like, why are you celebrating? And he's like, I got a new bit. And she said to him, like, I'm so jealous. Like, I wish I had something I would dance about when, like, my life is objectively horrible and I'm getting paid $8 for a show. You know, but it's like, that's it, man. Like, passion is everything at the end of the day.
So good. I haven't heard that story before about Bill Burr. I actually don't know that much about him.
He was a loser for like his whole forever.
How? He's so funny.
Yeah, he's so good. But like a lot of Louis C.K. was the same, man. He was he didn't get successful till he was like nearly 50, I think. Like, yeah.
So there is hope.
Oh, for sure. Life is long. It's actually short, but you know.
But there's, you're right. Life's short, but there's a lot of opportunity within it to like turn things around.
And if you put like I'm going to do this for 3 years, well, it's like you're going to fail because I don't know. Someone said once, like, most people overestimate what they can do in 1 year and underestimate what they can do in 10.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, but it's like it's and like I've been thinking about that now because you're like 40, right?
Yeah, I'm turning 40 in 5 months. Right.
Yeah. Well, happy birthday in 5 months. But like,
how do you know we're not going to be getting wasted?
Go bowling. But yeah, I think about it now. If I quit now, because I do love it. Like if I quit now, when I'm 40, I'll be just thinking every day. I'll be like, what if I spent the last 15 years working on it? Where would I be? Yeah. What would my life look like? You know, and I don't want to have that in my head, so I have to keep doing it, even if it's just a side gig for the whole rest of my life. Yeah. You know, that's better than not knowing.
I love that. Do you need that tattooed on you somewhere?
I've got I got a clown riding a pig tattooed.
You do?
Yeah, I got it earlier this year. I had a lucid dream where I got it clown riding a pig tattooed, and then I just went and got it.
Is it like it was in the dream?
Yeah, exactly. I got my mate to draw it because he's an artist. I messaged him on Instagram. I was like, can you draw a clown riding a pig?
Good.
And he drew uncannily similar to what was in my dream. It was really,
I love that.
It was
I
sick.
love that. Yeah. It sounds like you got to a point in your life where you've realised that this is just a game and it can be a fun one. And whether it's a fun game or not, it's up to you and your mindset and the things that you do. Like you can have a dream about something, wake up and go, why not? Let's get it tattooed.
For sure.
There's no restriction. There's no hesitation. You see opportunity at every moment to turn something that is relatively rudimentary like a dream and turn it into a moment and turn it into memories and turn it into a story.
Yeah. You know how you probably look back on periods of your life and cringe? So
How do you know?
But at least in my 20s, what I found is every couple of years I look back on 2 years earlier and I'm like, that person's unrecognizable. So I've sort of reached a point now where I've accepted that I'm doing things that I'm going to be horrified by in the near future.
Yeah.
You know? But it is what it is.
Yeah.
Can't get caught up on it. I don't have any tattoos that I don't regret because I regret them. I pre-regret them. I got every tattoo I have is purposefully stupid, you know.
Yeah.
Because I think if I got a meaningful tattoo and then regretted it, it would be actually sad.
Yeah.
You know. But if I'm just I'm getting a dumb as thing on my leg, I can just chuckle at it.
Yeah.
Takes the seriousness out of it.
Yeah. Exactly. You take the seriousness out of life. You're really good at that. You know, we're probably getting towards the end. This is your first podcast, I think.
Yeah, mate.
I'm not sure if we told the audience, whether we said that off air before, but how have you found this experience?
Oh, it's good. I mean, I think we both had a few distractions on the street.
There's been some very distractible people walking past, for sure.
But yeah, this is fun. I'd love to run it back with a couple more beers.
Absolutely.
Maybe some more preparation.
Yeah. And I think your story is littered with evidence of bits and pieces of advice and wisdom that you've sort of clung onto and given yourself and obtained from others. And so if someone hasn't been paying attention, well, then you've missed a lot. But I always ask my guests, it's a rudimentary question I ask every guest, is if you got one piece of advice, maybe in your context it's for someone who's thinking of taking up stand-up comedy, what would it be?
Advice. As a 26-year-old who's broke, I feel like I'm probably not in the best position to be giving people life advice, but one thing I would say, which I think has at least been very valuable for me, is embrace failure. I think embracing failure and accepting that it's inevitable and it's an inevitable part of future success is really helpful, because a lot of people, especially where I'm from, culturally, a lot of people really conform and avoid doing things for fear of failure. But if you pre-accept the failure and then when it happens, you're like, yo, this is part of the wider path of success.
Yeah.
It's just a much better way to live life.
Pre-regret.
Yeah. Pre-regret the tattoos. Expect every show to be awful. Expect every post you do to get no views. And then you'll always be being pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I love that. Such good advice. I think you're not the sort of person that only embraces failure. You grab failure, you crush it up into a little rock, you chop it up, you rack up a line with it, and you snort
put it up
it.
my ass. We're shelving failure in this alleyway.
But yeah, this has been a really great experience for me too. I just want to thank the audience for sticking with us through all the background noise.
Sorry for swearing.
Oh, no. Actually, I think you opened up my hesitations in swearing as well. So expect more F-bombs in this podcast from now on, audience. But yeah, thank you for coming out here. Thanks for being part of this. This has been a great experience for me too. I think given that we just met randomly on the sidewalk after your show on Wednesday, I didn't come here with any expectations, but you delivered. And, you've shown me the true person behind all of that everyday funny stuff that you laugh about, and hopefully your audience as well gets value out of listening to this and maybe picks up some things about your past and present that they didn't know about you before. So your dates for your comedy show appearance once again?
27th of March to the 7th of April, 8 p.m, Charles Dickens Tavern. I chose the Charles Dickens Tavern for 2 reasons. Primarily because the alcohol is extremely cheap. They have $30 bottles of wine in there. I like my crowds rowdy and drunk. So if you do come to the show, make sure you get fairly drunk and heckle me if you want. And the other reason I chose Charles Dickens Tavern is because I absolutely love English literature. But that's neither here nor there.
There's so many strings to your bow. The lawyer that loves English literature, that likes getting baked on the weekends and making people laugh. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
And most importantly, people that can't make the show, where can they see your material? Where can you make them laugh? And where can they find you?
Self-loathing hedonist is my Instagram handle and my TikTok, which I think currently has about 40 followers. I think the algorithm actually, I think I'm gonna have to make a new account because I got banned for recommending pokey. It's a long story, but yeah, self-loathing hedonist. Or if you Google me on YouTube, just Sean Collier comedy, it'll come up with some clips of me.
Yeah, be prepared to see things that need to be looked at with a lens that looks at the bright side of life, people, because honestly, you're right, you could get banned for some of those things, but
there's a reason I'm not on TV. There's a lot of reasons, but yeah, one of them's content for sure.
Yeah, right. Well, I think being on mainstream television these days is probably not as big of a draw card as it used to be.
No, for sure, it's a dying horse.
But yeah, I want to thank you for your time coming here. We're going to close this out. I'm super grateful to have you as my first comedian on. This is kind of going to be a bit of addictive. I can't remember laughing on an episode as much as I have, and I hope the audience got a laugh out of it too. And yeah, thanks, Sean.
Sure, brother. It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure. Woo. We'd love to know what you thought of that episode of the Lui Diaz Podcast. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and even TikTok to let us know. And be sure to follow, subscribe, and leave us a review on Spotify, where you can catch some of our other really great episodes. Thanks for listening, and catch you next time.